Captain Alan Russell sat alone in his quarters aboard the Earth vessel Defiance. The small room felt even smaller today, his eyes fixed on the screen in front of him, where the face of Counselor Zek-Sithar filled the display. The reptilian diplomats, scales shimmered under the lights of the Galactic Council chamber. For the security and stability of all galactic citizens, Zek-Sithar said, his voice oddly smooth for a being with such sharp teeth, the Council has unanimously voted to implement Directive 7329. All human expansion beyond current boundaries must cease immediately. Existing frontier colonies will begin controlled relocation back to Earth-controlled space within 30 standard days. Alan's hand tightened around his coffee mug. Relocation. A nice word for forced removal. He had visited many of those frontier colonies. New Hope with its vast wheat fields. Libertas, where they had just finished building their first university. Europa Nova, where his sister Karen and her family had lived for 12 years. The counselor continued, all human captains are hereby ordered to return to Earth space to assist with this necessary security measure. The transmission ended, replaced by the official council seal, 12 stars arranged in a circle against a black background. Alan stood and walked to his viewport. The stars looked the same as yesterday, but everything had changed. The Defiance was currently 3 weeks from Earth, returning from a diplomatic mission to the Arcturus system. They had been successful, opening new trade routes. What did that matter now? His communication panel chimed, then chimed again, and again. Within minutes, he had received 17 urgent messages from other human captains. The first was from Lisa Boyd of the Orion's Might. Did you just get the council directive? Tell me this is some kind of mistake. Another from Rick Summers on the Valiant. They can't be serious. Frontier colonies have millions of people. Some have been established for decades. Diane Collins from the Nova Dawn wrote only, we need to talk. Secure channel. 0200 hours. Alan ran his hands through his short brown hair. At 43, he had spent most of his adult life in space. He had always followed orders, always respected the chain of command. The Council had welcomed humans into the galactic community 30 years ago. While other species sometimes looked down on humans as newcomers, relations had generally been good. What had changed? He tapped his communication panel. First Officer Greg Mitchell to the captain's quarters, please. Greg arrived minutes later, his normally cheerful face serious. Tall and lanky, Greg had served with Alan for 7 years. You saw the council transmission? Alan asked. Greg nodded. The whole crew is talking about it. Engineer Patricia Williams has family on Libertas. She's pretty upset. We all should be upset, Alan said. He turned back to the viewport. The council is asking us to help round up our own people. Why now? Greg asked. Why after all these years? Alan pulled up a star chart on his display. Look at human expansion over the last 10 years. Red dots appeared across one section of the galaxy, showing human colonies and outposts. Now look at projected expansion for the next 20 years. More red dots spread further out. We're growing fast, Greg said. Faster than any other species in Council history, Alan confirmed. And now look at this. He pulled up another chart showing resource development and energy production. The Dyson Swarm project around Alpha Centauri would triple our energy production within 5 years. Greg whistled. So they're afraid we'll become too powerful. They're afraid we already are. Alan closed the display. The Council has always maintained balance by keeping newer species dependent on established ones. We're breaking that model. His communication panel chimed again. A message from Carol Martinez, an old friend who captained the Explorer. The text was brief. Don't comply. Others feel the same. Meeting being arranged. Alan felt a weight settle on his shoulders. Carol was suggesting something unprecedented, defying a direct council order. The implications were enormous. At best, he would lose his command. At worst, it could mean war. What are your orders, sir? Greg asked. Alan looked at his first officer. Set course for Earth as directed. For now, we follow procedure. Greg hesitated. And when we reach Earth? That's 3 weeks away, Alan said. A lot can happen in 3 weeks. After Greg left, Alan began methodically reading through every message, every bit of information he could access about the Council's directive. He pulled up personnel files of the Defiance's crew, noting which ones had family on frontier colonies. 117 out of 342 crew members. More than a third would be directly affected. At 200 hours, Alan secured his quarters and activated the encrypted communication system. Diane Collins' face appeared on his screen along with 7 other human captains. "We all know why we're here," Diane said. Her dark eyes were intense, her voice controlled but angry. "The Council has crossed a line. Do they really expect us to help them dismantle our own colonies?" asked Frank Peters of the Horizon. "Some of those settlements have been there for generations. They expect us to follow orders like good little soldiers," Lisa Boyd said bitterly. "Just like we always have." Alan listened as the captains shared information, theories, and fears. Some had already spoken with colonial leaders who were universally opposed to relocation. "The Council doesn't understand humans," said John Wilkins, from the Pioneer. "We don't abandon our homes." "What exactly are you all suggesting?" Alan finally asked. "That we refuse the order? That's mutiny." "It's more than mutiny," Diane said quietly. "If enough of us refuse, if we actively oppose this directive, it's rebellion." The word hung in the virtual space between them. "I've served in space for 15 years, Alan said. "I've always believed in the Council's mission of peaceful cooperation. But this," he shook his head, "this isn't cooperation. It's subjugation." "So, what do we do?" asked Steve Mason from the Freedom. "We need more information and we need to talk to more captains," Alan said. "And we need a secure place to meet. In person, not over comms." "I know a place," Lisa said. "Abandoned mining station in Saturn's rings, off the regular patrol routes. 3 weeks from now," Alan decided. "Spread the word, but carefully. Only to captains you trust completely." After the call ended, Alan stayed at his desk for a long time. Outside his viewport, the stars continued their silent watch as the Defiance moved through space. Somewhere out there, the Council expected obedience. They would soon discover that some orders should never be given. Alan made his decision. He would attend the meeting at Saturn, and he would not comply with Directive 7329. The course of his life, and possibly the future of humanity, had just changed forever. 3 weeks passed quickly aboard the Defiance. Alan spent the time carefully feeling out his crew. He spoke with officers he trusted, asking hypothetical questions about loyalty and duty. Most seemed troubled by the Council's directive, but he needed to be certain before he shared his plans. The day before they were scheduled to reach Earth, Alan called his senior staff to the briefing room. 6 people sat around the oval table, watching him with curious eyes. "Our orders are to dock at Earth Station Alpha tomorrow," Alan began. "But we're not going to do that." Silence filled the room. First Officer Greg Mitchell looked unsurprised. Chief Engineer Patricia Williams glanced nervously at Security Officer Benjamin Clark. "Sir?" Medical Officer Laura Reed finally spoke. "Are you saying we're disobeying direct orders?" Alan nodded. "I am, and I want to be clear. This is my decision. Anyone who objects can take a shuttle to Earth once we reach Saturn. No questions asked. No marks on your record." Benjamin Clark leaned forward. "Saturn, sir? There's a meeting happening there. 27 human captains are gathering to discuss the Council's directive." Patricia Williams spoke next, her voice tight with emotion. "My parents, my brother's family, they're all on Libertas. They built their homes there. They won't leave." "None of the colonists want to leave," Alan said, "and I don't believe we should help force them." Navigation Officer Kelly Wilson, the youngest of the senior staff, raised her hand. "What happens after the meeting? What's the plan?" "That depends on what the captains decide together," Alan said honestly. "But I believe we need to take a stand. The Council has overstepped." Chief Communications Officer Hank Morris, who had been silent until now, tapped his fingers on the table. "This could be seen as treason against the Council." "It could," Alan agreed. which is why I need to know where each of you stands." One by one, they gave their answers. Greg, Patricia, and Kelly were immediately supportive. Benjamin and Laura requested time to think. Hank asked detailed questions about potential consequences before reluctantly agreeing. "Change our course to Saturn," Alan ordered when they finished, "and maintain communication silence except for emergency channels." The next day, as Earth appeared on their long-range scanners, the Defiance changed direction and accelerated toward the outer solar system. 3 days later, they approached the abandoned mining station hidden in Saturn's majestic rings. Chunks of ice and rock provided natural cover as the Defiance maneuvered toward the station. Through the viewport, Alan could see other ships already docked: the Orion's Might, the Valiant, the Nova Dawn, and many others. "We've got company," Greg said, pointing to the radar. 2 more ships approaching, the Explorer and the Horizon. By the time Alan docked and entered the station, most of the other captains had already arrived. The meeting hall was once the station's main processing facility. Mining equipment had been pushed against the walls to create space. The air smelled of dust and old metal. Lisa Boyd from the Orion's Might spotted him first. She crossed the room to greet him. Her gray hair was cut short and her blue eyes were sharp with intelligence. "Alan, glad you made it." She clasped his hand firmly. 25 ships now. 2 more expected. "Any problems getting here?" Lisa shook her head. "Not yet, but Earth Control has started asking questions about why so many captains changed course or missed check-ins." Carol Martinez joined them. Alan had known her for years. She had once saved the Defiance from pirates in the Tau Ceti system. Her normally cheerful face was serious today. "They'll figure it out soon enough," Carol said. "We don't have much time." Diane Collins, captain of the Nova Dawn, called the meeting to order. The 25 captains formed a rough circle in the center of the hall. "We all know why we're here," Diane began. Her voice carried authority. "The Council has ordered us to help relocate. No, let's call it what it is. To help forcibly remove millions of humans from their homes. Homes they built with their own hands on worlds they terraformed themselves." Murmurs of agreement filled the room. "What I want to know," said Steve Johnson, a young captain with the Endeavor, "is why now? We've been expanding for 3 decades. Why is the Council suddenly concerned?" "I think I know," Diane said. She activated a holographic projector in the center of the circle. An image appeared, a massive structure being built around a distant star. Thousands of solar collectors arranged in a partial sphere. "This is humanity's Dyson Swarm project around Alpha Centauri," Diane explained. "Phase 1 is nearly complete. When fully operational, it will capture enough solar energy to power all human worlds and facilities with plenty to spare." Rick Summers of the Valiant whistled. "Energy independence." "Exactly," Lisa said. "Right now we rely on Council worlds for nearly 40% of our energy needs. The Swarm would change that." "It's not just energy," Frank Peters added. His weathered face was grim. "It's what the energy represents: industrial capacity, military potential, the ability to expand even faster." Alan looked around the circle. "So the Council is afraid of what we might become." "They're afraid we might become equals," Diane said. "The 12 elder species have controlled the galaxy for thousands of years. They've never faced a species that developed as quickly as humans." The discussion continued for hours. Some captains argued for diplomatic solutions, petitioning the Council, seeking allies among more sympathetic species. Others pushed for immediate action to protect the frontier colonies. Late into the night, Alan stood to address the group. "Whatever we decide, we need to be united. If some captains comply, while others resist, we'll fail." "What exactly are you proposing?" asked Liam Foster from The Guardian. "A formal coalition," Alan said. "The Captain's Coalition. We pledge to each other and to the colonies that we will not enforce the Council's directive. We will not participate in the relocation. And if necessary, we will actively protect human settlements." The room grew quiet as the captains considered the implications. "That's rebellion," someone said softly. "Yes," Alan acknowledged. "It is." One by one, the captains voiced their support. By morning, all 27 had signed the coalition agreement. They established secure communication protocols and assigned defense responsibilities for different colonial regions. As Alan prepared to return to the Defiance, Lisa Boyd stopped him. "We've just started something that can't be easily stopped," she said. "You know that, right?" Alan nodded. "The question is whether the Council will back down when they realize we won't comply." "And if they don't?" Alan looked through a viewport at Saturn's rings glittering in the sunlight. "Then we'll show them that humans aren't easily pushed around." Back, aboard the Defiance, Alan addressed his entire crew. He explained the coalition, the pledge, and what it might mean for their future. When he finished, he offered again to let anyone who wished to return to Earth leave without consequences. Not a single crew member took the offer. As the Defiance pulled away from the station and set course for the frontier colony of New Eden, Alan felt both dread and determination. The captains had rebelled. What came next would change the course of human history forever. The human colony of New Eden lived up to its name. Green fields stretched to the horizon. Clear streams wound through fertile valleys. From orbit, it looked peaceful, untouched by the brewing conflict. But appearances were deceiving. For 2 weeks, the Defiance had patrolled New Eden's orbit alongside 4 other coalition ships. Captain Alan Russell stood on the bridge, watching the colony's lights glimmer through breaks in the cloud cover. "Any word from the other sectors?" he asked Greg. "Mitchell. All quiet so far," Greg replied. "Lisa Boyd reports normal activity around Libertas. Rick Summers says the same for Horizon Colony." Alan nodded. Intelligence suggested the Council would make their first move soon. But where? The coalition had spread their 27 ships to protect key colonies, creating a thin defensive line across human space. First Officer Greg looked up from his console. "Captain, we're detecting multiple FTL signatures approaching the system." Alan straightened. "How many?" 9. No, 11 ships. Council registry. "They'll arrive in approximately 20 minutes. Alan activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, all hands to battle stations." He opened a secure channel to the other coalition ships. "In orbit. Coalition vessels, this is Captain Russell. We have 11 Council ships incoming. Maintain formation and prepare for possible hostile action. Remember our agreement, we do not fire first." Throughout the Defiance, crew members rushed to their stations. In the engine room, Patricia Williams and her team prepared for combat maneuvers. In the medical bay, Laura Reed set up emergency triage areas. Benjamin Clark distributed weapons to the security team in case of boarding attempts. Alan watched the minutes tick by on his display. He had fought pirates before, engaged in training, exercises with alien vessels, but this was different. This could be the start of a war. The Council ships dropped out of FTL in tight formation. Leading them was a massive dreadnought, twice the size of the Defiance with the distinctive markings of the Silurian fleet. Communications Officer Hank Morris looked up from his station. "We're being hailed by the lead Council vessel, Captain." "On screen," Alan ordered. The view screen filled with the image of a Silurian commander. His scaled face was marked with the red and gold patterns of high military rank. "I am Admiral Krovac of the Galactic Council Enforcement Fleet," the Silurian said. His voice was deep and gravelly. "You are in violation of Council Directive 7329. Power down your weapons and prepare to receive boarding parties. We are here to begin the relocation of this colony." Alan kept his voice steady. "This is Captain Alan Russell of the Earth vessel. Defiance. New Eden remains under human jurisdiction by treaty. Your presence here with an armed fleet violates 17 separate articles of galactic law." Krovac's eyes narrowed. "The Council's directive supersedes previous treaties. Stand down, human. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." "We will not stand down," Alan replied, "and we will not allow you to remove these colonists from their homes." The Silurian commander leaned closer to the screen. "You are outnumbered and outgunned, Captain. Don't throw away your life and the lives of your crew on a hopeless gesture." Alan glanced at Greg, who nodded slightly. The coalition had planned for this moment. "Actually, Admiral," Alan said, "I don't believe we are outnumbered." On cue, 6 more human ships dropped out of FTL behind the Council fleet. Lisa Boyd's Orion's might led them, weapons powered and shields at maximum. Krovak's surprise was visible even through his alien features. "This is madness. You cannot hope to defeat a Council enforcement fleet." "We don't want to fight you," Alan said, "but we will defend our people." The communication cut off abruptly. For a long moment, the 2 fleets faced each other in the space above New Eden. Then Krovak's dreadnought fired. The energy beam struck the Defiance's forward shields. The ship shuddered under the impact. "Shields holding at 87%, reported Kelly Wilson from the navigation station. "Return fire," Alan ordered. "Target their weapon systems only." The battle erupted across the New Eden system. What the human ships lacked in size and raw power, they made up for with a new technology the Council knew nothing about. Quantum-linked targeting systems that allowed their ships to coordinate with millisecond precision. 4 human vessels focused their fire on Krovak's flagship, systematically, taking out weapon emplacements and sensor arrays. The other coalition ships engaged the smaller Council vessels, fighting in coordinated pairs. "Captain," Greg called out over the noise of the bridge. "The Freedom is taking heavy damage." Alan saw it on his tactical display. Captain Joey Rodriguez's ship was caught between 2 Council destroyers, its shields failing. "Direct the Valiant to assist," Alan ordered. But it was too late. A concentrated barrage from the Council ships tore through the Freedom's hull. The ship's reactor went critical, a bright flash that momentarily blinded the sensors. "The Freedom is gone," Greg said quietly. "No escape pods detected." Alan felt the loss like a physical blow. Joey Rodriguez had been at the Saturn meeting. He had joined the coalition without hesitation. Now he and his crew were dead. "Focus fire on the destroyer that took out the Freedom," Alan ordered, his voice hard. The battle continued for nearly an hour. 2 more Council ships were disabled. 1 human vessel, the Pioneer under Captain John Wilkins, was forced to retreat with severe damage to its engines. Finally, Admiral Krovak's flagship, now drifting with minimal power, hailed the Defiance again. The Silurian looked different now, his scales duller, a green fluid seeping from a cut on his face. "Enough," Krovak said. "You have made your point, human." "Withdraw your remaining ships," Alan replied. "Leave human space and take word back to the Council. We will defend our colonies." Krovak's expression was unreadable to human eyes. "This is not over. The Council controls thousands of worlds, millions of ships. This small victory will mean nothing in the end. Perhaps," Alan acknowledged. "But it means everything today." The disabled Council ships were loaded with escape pods containing their surviving crew members. The remaining functional Council vessels reluctantly took the pods in tow and departed the system. As the last Council ship disappeared into FTL, a cheer went up throughout the Defiance. But Alan felt no joy. They had won the first battle, but at a terrible cost. That night, the coalition captains held a somber meeting via secure channel. They honored Joey Rodriguez and the crew of the Freedom. They discussed strategies for the battles they knew would come. And Alan Russell, who had never planned to be a rebel, recorded a message that would be broadcast to all Council worlds. Today, humans fought to defend their homes and their right to determine their own future. We did not start this conflict, but we will defend our people, our homes, our future. The captains have spoken. Across human space, as colonies received news of the battle, the mood was a mixture of fear and pride. The line had been drawn. The captains had rebelled, and the Galactic Council had suffered its first defeat. The Council's response came swiftly. 3 days after the battle at New Eden, they declared all humans enemies of galactic peace. Trade with human worlds was forbidden. Any alien vessel found transporting humans would be impounded, and its crew imprisoned. On the Defiance, Alan Russell reviewed the latest reports with his senior officers. The news wasn't good. "They've established blockades at all major transit points leading to human space," Greg Mitchell said, highlighting positions on the star map. Council warships are patrolling our borders in groups of 5 or more. Patricia Williams, who had family on frontier colonies, looked worried. How long can the colonies last without supplies from outside? It varies, Alan answered. The older colonies like Libertas and New Eden have well-established agriculture and manufacturing. They might hold out for a year or more. But the newer settlements, he shook his head. Some have only a few months of critical supplies. What? About Earth? Laura Reed asked. Surely they won't blockade our homeworld. Earth is different, Alan explained. Too many alien diplomats and businesses are based there. But the Council has restricted Earth ships to the solar system. No one in, no one out. The situation grew worse over the next 3 months. Food shortages began on the outer colonies. Medical supplies ran low. The coalition ships did what they could, running the blockade to deliver essential goods, but 27 vessels couldn't meet the needs of millions of colonists. Alan's Defiance had just completed a dangerous supply, run to Europa Nova when Lisa Boyd contacted him on a secure channel. Her face looked tired but excited. Alan, we need to meet. Something big is happening. Rendezvous at these coordinates in 2 days. 2 days later, the Defiance met the Orion's Might at an uninhabited star system far from the usual patrol routes. To Alan's surprise, 5 other coalition ships were already there. Lisa greeted him as he boarded her ship. Thanks for coming. Diane will be here soon with some unexpected guests. Guests? Alan raised an eyebrow. What's going on? You'll see, Lisa said with the first smile Alan had seen in months. An hour later, Diane Collins arrived in the Nova Dawn, but she wasn't alone. Her ship was accompanied by a vessel of unfamiliar design, sleek with a metallic hull that seemed to shift colors as it moved. In the Orion's Might's conference room, the coalition captains gathered. Diane entered with 3 beings unlike any Alan had ever seen. They were tall and slender with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. Their movements were graceful, almost like dancing. Captains, Diane said, I'd like you to meet Ambassador Trell and Delegates Zoni and Pell of the Vex Ascendancy. A murmur ran through the room. The Vex were almost legendary, a secretive species that had withdrawn from council politics centuries ago. Some humans believed they were just myths. Ambassador Trell stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice had a musical quality. Greetings, human captains. We have watched your conflict with the Council with great interest. The Vex have been monitoring. The situation? Rick Summers asked. We have always monitored the Council, Trell replied. For centuries we have observed their methods. The treatment of your species follows a familiar pattern. Trell activated a holographic display. It showed historical records. Other species that had been similarly targeted by the Council when they grew too quickly or developed too rapidly. The Council fears what humans might become, Trell explained. We recognize what you already are, individuals, who choose their own path rather than follow blindly. Why come to us now? Alan asked. Because you have done something unprecedented, Trell said. You have successfully resisted, and because the balance of power in this galaxy is about to shift. The Vex offered an alliance, not military support, as their species was largely pacifist, but intelligence, technology, and diplomatic connections to other species who chafed under Council rule. We are not the only ones who question the Council's methods, Trell said. The Novan Collective has already condemned the blockade of human worlds. After the Vex departed, the captains discussed this unexpected development. Some were cautious about trusting a species they knew so little about. Others saw it as their first real hope since the rebellion began. With Vex intelligence, we could avoid Council patrols entirely, Lisa pointed out. We could establish reliable supply lines to all the colonies. And the Novans are silicon-based entities, Rick added. They don't need the same resources we do. If they openly trade with us, it would break the Council's united front. News came soon of another potential ally. The mercantile Tau, seeing opportunity in chaos, began smuggling supplies to human worlds, charging high prices but providing vital goods. With new allies, better supply lines, and growing support even among some Council worlds, The human resistance transformed into a true rebellion. The captains, once simply refusing orders, now actively targeted Council military installations and disrupted their communications networks. 6 months after the battle at New Eden, Allen, now admiral of the rebel fleet, called a meeting of all coalition captains and representatives from allied species. They gathered at a hidden base built inside an asteroid in neutral space. "We've survived longer than the Council expected," Allen told the assembled group. "We've protected our colonies and even expanded our influence, but we're still fighting a defensive war." "What are you suggesting?" asked Lisa Boyd, who had become his most trusted advisor. "It's time to take the fight to them," Allen said. "We need a decisive victory, something to show the galaxy that humans will never be subjugated." He activated a holographic display showing a massive space station orbiting a distant star. "This is Galactus Prime, the Council's central station and seat of government. It's where the Council members meet, where their central archives are stored, where their policies are decided." The room grew quiet as everyone realized what he was proposing. "You want to attack the Council directly?" Steve Johnson asked, his voice incredulous. "I want to do more than attack," Allen said. "I want to change the equation completely." He outlined a daring plan. While the main human fleet engaged the Council defenders in space, small infiltration teams would board Galactus Prime itself. Their goal wasn't destruction but revelation, accessing the Council's secret archives and broadcasting evidence of their long history of suppressing emerging species. "The Council maintains power through reputation and fear," Allen explained. "If we show the galaxy who they really are and what they've done, that power crumbles." Diane Collins stood up. "My ship will lead the infiltration team. The Nova Dawn has the best stealth technology in the fleet." One by one, other captains volunteered for what they all knew might be a suicide mission. The Vex representatives offered detailed schematics of Galactus Prime's security systems. The Novans pledged a small contingent of their crystalline ships to join the assault. As the meeting concluded, Lisa pulled Allen aside. "This could end the war, or make it 100 times worse." "I know," Allen acknowledged, "but we can't keep fighting a war of attrition. The Council has too many resources. Eventually they'll wear us down. Then we better make this count," Lisa said grimly. The next day, as ships prepared to depart for their assigned positions, Allen addressed the assembled crews by holographic projection. "We didn't ask for this conflict. We didn't want rebellion. But sometimes freedom requires fighting for. What we do in the coming days we do not just for ourselves, but for all species who deserve the right to determine their own destiny." The greatest gamble in human history was about to begin. The human fleet gathered in the darkness of deep space, far from any star system. 143 ships of various sizes and designs, their running lights dimmed to avoid detection. They were joined by 11 Novan crystalline vessels, their faceted hulls reflecting the distant starlight, and 27 Tau merchant ships converted for battle. The Vex had sent only a single observer craft, but their intelligence had been invaluable in planning the attack. Aboard the Defiance, now the flagship of the human fleet, Admiral Alan Russell addressed his officers one last time. "In 30 minutes, we jump to the Galactus system. Our intelligence suggests the Council has nearly 300 ships defending the station." Alan paused, letting that sink in. "The odds are not in our favor, but we have surprise and purpose on our side." First Officer Greg Mitchell nodded grimly. "And our new targeting systems." "The fleet is divided into 3 groups," Alan continued. "First wave will engage the Council defenders head-on. Second wave will target their communication arrays and weapon platforms. Third wave will provide cover for the infiltration teams." On the main screen, a detailed image of Galactus Prime rotated slowly. The space station was enormous, nearly the size of a small moon, with multiple docking rings and defensive emplacements. The infiltration teams led by Captain Diane Collins and Captain Rick Summers will board the station here, here, and here, Allen said, highlighting 3 access points. Their mission is to reach the central archives and broadcast the Council's secrets to every world in the galaxy. The officers dispersed to their stations. The Defiance hummed with tension as the crew made final preparations. In the engine room, Patricia Williams ran last-minute checks on the power systems. Benjamin Clark distributed specialized boarding equipment to the security teams who would join the infiltration force. Alan stood alone for a moment, looking out at the assembled fleet. This was it, the culmination of months of rebellion, the biggest gamble of their lives. Everything depended on reaching those archives. Lisa Boyd's voice came through his personal communicator. "The Orion's might is ready, Admiral. My teams are. Standing by." "Thank you, Lisa," Alan replied. "See you on the other side." The countdown reached 0. Throughout the fleet, FTL drives engaged simultaneously. The stars blurred and stretched as 181 vessels jumped toward Galactus Prime. They emerged in perfect formation, just outside the Galactus system's defensive perimeter. For a brief moment, there was silence as the Council's sensors registered the sudden appearance of the rebel fleet. Then alarms blared across both fleets and the battle began. Council ships moved to intercept, their energy weapons lighting up the darkness of space. The human fleet split into its assigned groups, executing maneuvers that would have been impossible without their quantum-linked systems. Alan watched from the Defiance's bridge as the first exchanges of fire illuminated the void. Status of infiltration. Teams? "Moving into position," Greg reported. "The Nova Dawn and the Valiant are approaching their entry points under stealth." The battle intensified as more Council ships joined the fight. The human first wave took heavy damage but held their positions, drawing attention away from the smaller, faster vessels carrying the infiltration teams. "Infiltration Team Alpha has breached the station," Communications Officer Hank Morris announced. "Team Beta is encountering resistance. Team Gamma is proceeding to secondary entry point." Lisa Boyd's voice crackled over the comm. "Admiral, we've got problems. The Council knows our target. They're concentrating defenses around the central archives." Alan made a quick decision. "Divert third-wave ships to support Team Beta. And prepare my shuttle. I'm joining the infiltration." Greg looked up in surprise. "Sir, with respect, this is too important, Greg. If we fail here, the rebellion ends. You have command of the Defiance." Minutes later, Alan's shuttle raced toward Galactus Prime, escorted by 2 fighter craft. Through the viewport, he could see the massive battle unfolding. Human and allied ships moving in coordinated patterns, Council vessels struggling to respond to tactics they had never encountered before. They docked at a maintenance airlock near where Team Alpha had entered. Alan joined a group of 6 security officers from the Defiance and proceeded into the station. The interior of Galactus Prime was opulent. High ceilings, polished surfaces, elaborate decorations from a dozen different worlds. Now those pristine halls were marred by weapon scorch marks and emergency lighting. Alarm klaxons wailed as they moved deeper into the station. Alan's group encountered Council security forces twice. Both times, the human security team's superior training and determination won out. They pressed on, following Vex-provided maps through maintenance tunnels and service corridors. They reached a junction where they met up with Diane Collins and what remained of her team. Her uniform was torn and a burn mark crossed her left arm. "Admiral," she greeted him, surprised. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Couldn't miss the main event," Alan replied. "Status? We're 3 levels away from the archives. Rick's team is approaching from the other side. Council security is heavy, but we're making progress." Together, they fought their way toward the central archives. The fighting grew more intense with each level they descended. Council guards of various species defended their secrets fiercely. Finally, they reached the massive doors of the central archive. Rick Summers and his team were already there, working to bypass the security systems. "Almost got it," Rick said, as they approached. "Their encryptions are complex, but our Vex friends provided the key algorithms." The doors slid open, revealing a vast chamber filled with data storage systems. In the center stood Counselor Zexithar, surrounded by guards. "You have lost everything," the reptilian counselor hissed. "Even if you take this station, our forces will hunt your species to extinction." Alan stepped forward. "We don't want to destroy the Council. We want to transform it. Equal representation for all spacefaring species. No more first-tier and second-tier members. No more decrees handed down without discussion or vote. Naive humans, Zexthar said dismissively. The galaxy needs order, structure, hierarchy. The galaxy needs truth, Alan replied. While they spoke, Diane and her team had reached the central console. She nodded to Alan. They were in. Throughout the station and across the galaxy, every communication channel began broadcasting footage from the Council archives, evidence of previous species that had been similarly targeted, relocated, and effectively neutered when they grew too quickly or developed too rapidly. The footage showed council meetings where members openly discussed methods to contain problematic species, ways to keep newer civilizations dependent on council resources, and contingency, plans for those who resisted. In the archive chamber, Zexthar watched in dismay as centuries of careful manipulation were exposed. "What have you done?" he whispered. "We've changed the game," Alan said simply. As the broadcasts continued, reports came in from across the battle. Council ships were standing down. Some captains, seeing the evidence of their leaders' duplicity, refused to continue fighting. Others, particularly those from species that had themselves been victims of council manipulation in the past, actively switched sides. When it was over, when the last pockets of resistance on Galactus Prime had surrendered, Alan stood in the council chamber itself. The grand circular room with its 12 ornate seats was quiet now. Lisa Boyd joined him there, her uniform scorched but her eyes bright with victory. "It worked," she said, almost disbelieving. "The council, the old council, is finished. Now comes the hard part," Alan replied, "building something better in its place." In the days that followed, as human and allied forces secured the station, a new interim governing body was established, with representatives from all species, including those previously excluded from council politics. The captains who had started as rebels became diplomats, military leaders, and for Alan Russell, the first human to serve as head of the new Galactic Alliance. Years later, when asked why he had risked everything to defy the council, Alan would simply say, "Because some orders should never be followed, and some futures are worth fighting for." Across human space and beyond, they still tell the story of how the captains rebelled, and the Galactic Council burned,